This is the Film Grinders Podcast. I'm your host, Nicolas Hauka. Me, Jacob Hall, and David Hollinshead talk all things NFL, mock drafts, prospect profiles, free agency, and everything else going on in the pro football world. We all hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Film Grinders Podcast. I'm your host, Nicolas Hauka, and I'm here with our third member, who we haven't seen in the first three episodes, David Hollinshead, the famous actor, quarterback coach, and prospect evaluator. Dave, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. I wish I could have been on the first three episodes, but my show's picking up steam right now. We're in Hell Weeks. I'm just happy to be here.
Just chasing the dream. What a multifaceted, talented man Dave is. So today, this is going to be his show. We're going to talk about Dave's top 10 quarterbacks. And he's got some interesting takes. I know, Dave, from what analysts are saying right now and scouts that are talking, this is a pretty top-heavy class with the top two, maybe three if you're high on a certain individual. And then after that, not a lot of quarterbacks to go around, really, especially in the first couple of rounds. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say that even in the top two, I wouldn't even say it's top-heavy. I think that it's tough to compare to other drafts, but I think that you even look at the top two, and quarterback is just such a prime position and such a quarterback-starved league that in other drafts, they would be dropped down. Like, I think we'll get to it, but I think these QBs are probably round 2, round 3 prospects. But when you're desperate, what are you going to do? You have to take them, right? You're not picking 1 overall, 2, 3 very often, or at least you hope not. But you got to take a QB, and that's who you're stuck with.
Now, you are a quarterback guy playing quarterback your whole life, for the most part. I know you played a little bit of receiver too, but how do you feel about NFL franchises reaching on quarterbacks constantly? This has kind of been an epidemic for a little bit. I think my first draft that I remembered occurring big time and following the draft process was 2011, because I was actually old enough to kind of recognize what was going on. But it was the Blaine Gabbert draft, right?
Your favorite draft?
Yes, as a Jaguars fan, that was definitely my favorite draft. What a great job there by the Jaguars front office, as always. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think teams should reach to get their guy, or do you think they should be careful and they should be more collected and think, hey, if we're not sure, let's just take the best player available?
I always think that if you're picking in the top 10, you just got to go best player available. It's the most surefire way to improve your team. And we've seen with guys like Sam Darnold very recently that you plug like a mid-range QB into a good system and he'll perform for you. So I think build around it, and then hopefully you take a flyer in like rounds 2 or 3, and then you plug him in, he does well, or you get a journeyman who comes in and can throw to Jefferson and Addison and all that, and he'll shine. I don't really believe on reaching on QBs unless you're really sold on them.
Right. I would agree with that personally. So we'll get started here. Let's go. We'll go from number 10 down.
Oh, okay.
We'll go from 10 down. You got to keep the fans wanting.
Yeah, totally.
Wanting and waiting so they continue to listen. So we'll go number 10. Dave, who's your number 10 quarterback?
My number 10 QB in this draft, and I've kind of changed my mind with my article that I posted not too long ago, just with the Senior Bowl and everything happening. And I can get a little more homerish with my picks, and I might be going against the mainstream. But for my number 10, I'm actually going Quinn Ewers out of Texas.
Okay.
He had a very productive career at Texas, but I mean, he's always been overshadowed by Arch Manning sitting right behind him, who also did very well when he stepped in. He's just there's a lot to criticize. I mean, from a arm talent and fundamental standpoint, he's not great. He doesn't have great mechanics. He doesn't have great velocity. He likes to skip over reads. He panics in the pocket. And my thing is that any weaknesses that you see in college is going to be magnified by like 10 when they get to the pros. So I'm a little... if he's skipping over reads in college, he's going to skip over reads and panic in the pocket a hell of a lot more in the pros. He also has huge injury concerns. I think he didn't play a lot of games and missed a lot of time his last year at Texas, and Arch Manning kind of stepped in with that. But his arm's always live. He can always make these kind of throws while improvising, and his short to intermediate accuracy is decent. But again, Texas had such a good offense. He had such great receivers around him that he was able to just throw it up to like Golden or Bond and he'd be fine, right? But I'm not too high on Quinn Ewers. I think if he went to, I have here that he would do great in like an LA Rams type offense where he just comes in, he's throwing to Devontae Adams, he's throwing to Puka, and he'd probably be okay to maybe develop in that kind of system. Like he might be a kind of Brock Purdy type that comes in and does well, but you're really banking on developing him and hoping that everyone else around him can elevate him.
Do you think that's plausible? He's an experienced starter, right? We're not talking about a guy that has been a 2-year starter or something like that. This guy's been starting for a long time, and he still has these flaws. Like, as you said, when I watch him too, I see a quarterback that for the most part is not comfortable under pressure, gets rid of the ball way too quickly when he has players in his face, and doesn't like to take hits to make tough throws over the middle. So these are some pretty glaring issues that I don't know how, for a guy like him, if he's a 2-year starter, you can say, you know what, we can project him to get better at that. Like, he's had a ton of reps, and he doesn't seem to be getting a lot better at that. And as far as the arm talent goes, some scouts say, oh, he's got a pretty live arm. You kind of mentioned you're not wowed by the arm talent at all. I don't even see it with the live arm. Like, it's good, but it's not wow. Like, a guy like Tyler Shug, to me, has a better arm. So, yeah, like, I don't know what this guy really offers you. And he skips over on reads, too. So I personally don't really see it with him. I think the fact that Arch Manning, who, when he filled in for this guy, wasn't particularly good. And again, like, he's not getting in a rhythm or anything like that. But when he's filled in, he hasn't been good. And that's the guy that's pushing you, right? Yeah. If you're the guy and you're going to make it in the NFL, that's not really a reality. That doesn't really happen.
Because you brought in Arch Manning and he's kind of the guy that everybody wants to see play. But Ewers was productive in his 3 years, but there isn't a lot to like. And I don't mind Tyler Shuck either. And I could probably see him also going around this range. But just the production of Quinn Ewers, the fact he was a 3-year starter, he had very impressive wins, beating Michigan, beating Alabama, which are two very good defenses, full of 5 stars and 4 stars and very well coached. So you can't overlook that either. So, like, you're drafting him and hoping you can develop him. And that's hoping that his kind of intangibles winning these big games will do well. I mean, they have Stetson Bennett, who's kind of similar in that older prospect, showed up in college football playoffs, showed up against big teams. And you're hoping that maybe he'll do what Stetson Bennett didn't.
All right.
Or hasn't yet, excuse me.
All right. Okay, let's, so, yeah, I was going to say what's his ceiling, but you kind of already said that. Let's go to number 9. Who's number 9 on your list, Dave?
Number 9, I'm not changing this from my article, Dylan Gabriel from Oregon, which probably hurts you because you are such a Homer Ducks fan. Dylan, and there's talk about Dylan Gabriel maybe switching to receiver, but that's kind of just, I know there's some little rumblings going on, but I don't think that'll happen.
Well, no, he's not a plus athlete, like, at all.
I don't think he's a plus athlete. I don't know why I've seen, as I said, this is very low whisperings.
Right.
I don't think that'll happen either.
Okay.
Dylan Gabriel, kind of the same kind of thing. He experienced QB who had some good production at Oregon. He's a little different in that he does play with timing. He still has the good accuracy. He's a better athlete than Quinn Ewers. Not like super great athlete where you're thinking like Julian Edelman, switch him to slot. But we've seen him be able to maneuver the pocket a little bit better, throw with timing. But again, he'll be a 25-year-old rookie. He has no real elite traits. I mean, he's a little undersized for QBs I like, but again, we're seeing undersized QBs start to do really well in the NFL. But his arm talent's average, small frame, not unbelievably athletic. Honestly, I think he could be, and this was my comp for him, he could be a Taylor Heineke, where he just kind of comes in. He'll show up if his starter gets hurt, and again, he's in a good system that he can throw with timing and kind of hide his weaknesses. But there's just a lot of physical limitations, and I don't see him really getting there. I'm getting to that Taylor Heineke ceiling, as I'm going to call it.
I would agree, despite being a Ducks fan. I was really low on him for the first couple games. I think he was playing in a very quarterback-friendly system with Will Stein as the OC. Tons of RPOs. Stein does such a good job of using the whole width of the field in the college game, and he was so average to start the year. Then he did start to come into his own, but if you look at the throws he's making, there's no real wow throws. Oregon had such a talented roster. He just doesn't do it for me. He doesn't scream late round pick that figures it out in the NFL. Like, I think at best he's a career backup. And again, like, this is like, as you said, he's turning 25. Like, he's not young. He's been starting for a long, long time. And we kind of saw against Ohio State when he's playing the upper echelon to competition, he does not elevate you in any way at all. Right. So yeah, I agree with what you say. I think that's a fair spot for him at number 9. I think that's a good spot.
And I'm sure that hurts you, but I mean, he did well at Oklahoma too, but I just don't see enough of it. He's a jack of all trades. You can probably put him in any system and he'd be your middling fine backup, but he's never going to start, show out, be that sleeper pick that ends up your starter.
Yeah, he's not Bo Nix for sure. That's definitely. I know you don't like that comp, but there's a guy where was not high on draft boards and kind of skyrocketed up and found his way to Denver and with a lot of success this year. That's just not what Dylan. Eventually, that's not what Dylan Gabriel is, though, and I would agree. I'd agree with that. So ceiling for Gabriel, we're saying backup.
I'm saying backup. I think his ceiling might be like, as I keep saying Taylor Heineke, but
yes,
I think his ceiling might also be like a Matt Flynn type where he just makes millions of dollars as like this journeyman backup where, we really need a backup for a QB. Yeah, we'll go with Dylan Gabriel. We know what we're getting. We know he'll do the easy stuff. It limits our playbook a little bit, but yeah.
Hey, almost like a Gardner Minshew type, kind of not strong arm, but just is able to execute. And when you're down to your second quarterback, he's able to keep the ship going a little bit.
Minshew keeps getting opportunities to start.
He's such a cool guy, though. I don't think Gabriel's as cool of a guy. Anyway, let's move on to number 8. Who's your number 8, Dave?
At number 8, I've moved him up my little board here to Will Howard. And a lot of people may give me hate for this because he had such a bad combine showing. But I don't think the combine is for a QB like Will Howard. Will Howard, he's great at throwing on time, in rhythm, with receivers that he knows. So in a kind of a showcase like the combine where you're asking him to throw with receivers he's worked with for 5 seconds, and with routes that you haven't like coached into him what the timing on that route's going to be, he's not going to look great. So you saw him miss a few throws, which is kind of a red flag because it's a showcase, right? You're trying to show off your arm, show off your talents. I think he'll do a lot better at his pro day, which I'm pretty sure hasn't happened yet for Ohio State. But once you get him with guys that he knows where and when they're going to be at what time, he'll be fine. He's got a huge frame, which is good. He's got decent arm talent. He'll be fine. He can make the NFL throws. And he's got good skills, good pro skills, and a lot of pro experience. Like, he played with Chip Kelly as his OC, and I think that's probably where he's going to end up, backing up Geno Smith as a 5th round, maybe 6th round draft pick that they just kind of take a flyer on. But again, this is an older QB, and I think we're going to see that a lot with the whole NIL thing and all that. He's not great at reading complex defenses, and we kind of saw that, but he was still able to win the Natty. But again, he's surrounded by a great supporting cast. He had great offensive coaches. Chip Kelly doesn't ask too much of his QBs. Like, it's really just a one read kind of thing. You have one defender in conflict, whether it be in an RPO, whether it be even just like mesh concepts or high-low concepts. You're putting one defender in conflict and you're picking which route you're throwing to based off of that. And he has this statistical production. He has the accolades. I think you bring him to a system, and I've been saying this for a lot for the past 2 QBs, but you bring him in a system where he can just kind of develop, get to know his guys, not ask too much of him. You know what you're getting with him. And I think he'd be fine. I have my pro con for him is Will Levis, the poor man's Will Levis. I think you bring him to like Dallas, or you bring him to Pittsburgh, or even Vegas now with Chip Kelly being his OC. Like a guy who can just hand it off 25, 30 times a game and maybe not throw the ball more than 20 times a game. And you'll probably get decent production out of him.
So, couple things with him. It's really interesting you made that Raiders point with the Chip Kelly connection. Jake was actually saying the same thing like a month ago when I was just talking to him one-on-one. He was saying before the Geno trade, he was saying, he doesn't want a quarterback at 6 as a Raiders fan. He was saying, take the best player available and then maybe you get Will Howard in the 2nd or 3rd round. And there's a fit there. So it's interesting you said that. The other thing with combine and quarterbacks, personally, I don't care. You're in shorts and a t-shirt. There's no pressure. You're throwing routes on air. I don't really care. Like, I'm watching the film. Maybe it's nice to see what quarterbacks have a little bit more zip than others in person, but really, like, that's not a huge thing for me. I'm a big hater on the combine in general. I think the most valuable thing is the meetings and getting to know the prospect for sure. Right?
I agree, but there's two sides of that coin, right? Where yes, he's in shorts and t-shirts. Everyone's doing the Zach Wilson throw in their pro day to like as the finale throw, right? Like all the QBs can do it nowadays. But then the other side of that coin is you're in shorts and a t-shirt with no pressure. Why are you not hitting these receivers?
Because he's a gamer. He
he's
turns
a gamer,
it on. He's a gamer. He's a gamer. Hey, my best game ever that I played at quarterback, I had the worst warm-up of my life. Like, I was missing hitches in warm-up because I was so nervous. And then I got into the game, and I was good. I had a great game. So, again, not exactly an NFL talent here, but...
I disagree.
Hey, I'm pretty good in men's B-Div flag football. So
hell yeah.
Yes. Anyway, moving on to someone that has an actual future in football. Number 7.
Number 7, bit of a homer pick. I'm going Curtis Rourke. And as we are living in Vancouver, Canada, of course, there's the brother tied Nathan Rourke, who is our hometown starting QB for the BC Lions. He's kind of more of my kind of quarterback, like, me and what I like out of QBs. And unfortunately, it is very informed by my growing up watching Tom Brady. He's a big frame guy with great mechanics. If you were to take a QB and be like, okay, this is what we want you to look like as you're throwing the ball, Curtis Rourke would be it. And he throws with great timing, which is with his mechanics. And shout out to Rob Williams for coaching up a lot of these pro QBs. He throws with great timing. He's got great football IQ. He excelled in playing for a lower team, playing at Ohio, not Ohio State, Ohio U.
Go Bobcats.
He did great. Goes to Indiana, still not like a super high level, but if you lead Indiana to a 10-1 season on a torn ACL, no less, like dude has competitiveness.
Got them to the playoff too,
got Indiana to the playoffs. They've never won more than 10 games until this year. So, I mean, that's the...
Yeah, and like they play Notre Dame tight too. There's a couple plays in that game where his receiver kind of hangs him out to dry on that first interception on the first drive. Like they could have been up in that game 7-0, and things could have looked different with momentum. So, yeah. And as you mentioned, on a torn ACL all year.
On a torn... Which, lucky for him, he doesn't run. He is definitely not a off-script kind of QB. And I'm kind of overlooking that because I do like the guys who play extremely well in structure. Like, my comp for him is kind of a Tanner McKee type. Put him in. He's not going to wow you with, like, these electric TSN plays that are just going to go crazy. You're not going to hear the announcers go, oh, this is like Pat Mahomes. And you know exactly who I'm talking about. But you put him in, he's going to run your offense, right? And I do have him comped to Patriots and like with a Josh McDaniel system where he just sits in the pocket, makes the reads, delivers the throw, And that's all you're going to get out of him. And if that's all you can get out of him, that's more than you're getting from the other 3 prospects. So I'm very high on Rourke. I think he could end up, if anyone was going to have that 6th round Tom Brady type leap, he might be the guy out of here I would say is most likely. It's not a high likelihood, but he's probably the one I would say most likely to.
I really like his game. I am very opposite of you in that regard. I like the mobile quarterback who can move and do things with his legs. Because I think it's so hard for the style that you're talking about for a player like that to be effective because everything has to be right. But he does it so well. And we talked about him elevating that Indiana team. We talked about playing Notre Dame tight in the playoffs, a team that eventually lost in the national championship game. This guy can play football. He is smart. As you said, like a McDaniel system, yeah, that would be good for him. He can throw the ball. He doesn't have like a plus arm by any means, I would say, but it's good. Like it's solid. It's an NFL arm, 100%. You're not going to wow anyone, but it's an NFL arm. And he's so smart with the ball. I could see him being successful. And the Tanner McKee comp, I like that. We saw McKee step in when both Kenny Pickett and Jalen Hurts got hurt this year, and he looked good. He threw a touchdown to A.J. Brown, and he makes good, decisive decisions, and he was awesome in the preseason, too. I think that's a good comp. I could see him being successful if he gets given the opportunity. I think this could be a guy that comes in, and if he gets the right opportunity, can really show his stuff. And it's not just because he's Canadian and we're Canadian. I legitimately think this is a good prospect. So, yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Who's next, Dave?
All right, up next, we got Kyle McCord. Now, this is a guy that I'm probably once again higher on because this is what I look for in my QBs. I love that both of what we look for in QBs kind of reflect our own playing styles. I hate moving in the pocket, and I just like to stand there and throw the ball, whereas you're much more of a improvisational running kind of QB. But hey, that's...
Well, at 5'8", you kind of have to, right? So,
fair. Yeah.
Yeah, don't exactly have the height to stick in the pocket unless I'm in the gun. So that was...
Hey, I'm only 6'1".
At the high school ranks and junior football ranks, that was more than good enough.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
So, Kyle McCord out of Syracuse. Like I said, I'm much more higher on him. But he led the Buckeyes to an 11-1 season after C.J. Stroud left. And then I thought it was kind of inexplicable that he transferred to Syracuse, but I guess with Chip Kelly coming in and what Chip Kelly asked, he decided to go to a school that would like him a little bit better. But I mean, again, kind of the same thing with Curtis Rourke. He took Syracuse, not a good school, not a good team, and leads them to a 10-3 record. So he elevates the people around him. And not only that, he threw for 4,700 yards, 34 touchdowns in one season. And again, it's the same kind of QB as Rourke. I just have him a little bit higher. Just honestly, it's kind of a toss-up. Again, he's mechanically sound as well. He has decent pocket movement, can buy himself an extra second while he waits for the read route to develop underneath the rhythm. He's great with rhythm, throws with anticipation, timing. The little nitpicks that I have of him, his deep ball is fine. It's not great. It's not going to wow you. He can't throw the deep ball with velocity, which in the NFL you kind of need to do, with the closing speed of DBs in the NFL being what it is, being very good. But if you ask him just to throw with touch, just throw layups to, I don't know, like a George Pickens type or a DK Metcalf type, they'll make a play on it, right? He isn't a dual threat. He's not going to make plays off script. He can sometimes lock onto his primary read, but the production and the way that he elevated that Syracuse team, it just can't be understated.
Right. Yeah, I don't mind his game either. I like the situation at Syracuse, right? You're a guy that probably shouldn't have lost your job, but you had to transfer because you were about to. You go to a lesser program and you still play really well. One of the knocks about him is he's a little bit of a gunslinger and doesn't quite have the arm to do so. What do you think about that aspect of his game?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. The thing is, with his game and with the team he's playing around, you kind of need to have that gunslinger mindset in order to move the ball. If you're not going to be able to take the ball into your own hands and do it yourself, then you gotta do something. And sometimes you end up throwing some ill-advised throws. But I think he'd be a great kind of game manager type guy. You put him, and I've said this for all this QBs so far, but I mean, that's the thing when you're picking at QBs at the lower board. You put him in a well-designed system with good talent around you. He's not the most sexy QB in the draft, like by any means. But I have a note here, like guys like him just never go out of style. You put him in, he's going to run your offense just fine. He's smart enough to do it. He's got the arm that you can make the throws that you ask of him. I just like him. I just have that feeling about him that he's going to be just fine at the pro level. He's not going to start, but he'll be your journeyman QB who can kind of bounce around to different systems, and he'll be fine.
Right. So Kyle McCord is your number 6.
Yeah.
Who's your number 5?
Number 5 is your favorite QB in the draft, Jalen Milroe. He's not your favorite, I know, but he seems like kind of your kind of guy. I think he's just up the board so high because this is such a bad QB class. And I have my comp for him being Joe Milton, which I think is kind of disrespectful, if I'm being honest, but I couldn't think of anything else to compare him to. Dude's got a cannon of an arm. Like, you just watch him throw the ball, it just explodes out of his hand. Well, where's it going? Nobody knows. He doesn't even know sometimes. You want to talk about gunslinger? Right. Dude turns the ball over like he opened a bakery. Like, lots of fumbles, lots of interceptions. And some people are going to knock him for a poor Senior Bowl performance, but like, everyone performed poorly at the Senior Bowl. And again, it's tough for QBs to just come into a system, if we're going to call the Senior Bowl that, and be able to thrive, right? Like, you don't get the intricacies, you don't really get a big understanding. You're running basically high school ball against the elite athletes of the Senior Bowl. He also very quick to pull the ball and run, which at Alabama I thought was kind of strange because you have the talent around you. You can find guys if you just stand in there to have a little bit more savvy with your pocket awareness and pocket movement. Yeah, I'm not super high on him. He's a good competitor, live arm, but I don't see him. He's not accurate enough. He's just not.
Right. I think one thing, want to play devil advocate here.
You? Never.
So the Saban regime kind of found a winning formula with him, right? Not this year, but the season before. Kind of
short it's not Saban anymore, right?
No, I know. But so short to intermediate throws, using him as a runner quite a bit, and then the odd vertical shot down the field. Kind of how Jalen Hurts functions in the NFL, right? Yeah. Then, right, Kalen DeBoer comes on board, becomes the head coach. As we know, it's that Ryan Grubb system. I know he was in Seattle this year, but it's the vertical passing down the field. That's not Milroe's game. Do you think that contributed at all? Or do you think it's just he is inaccurate and there's all these issues?
I mean, two things can be true, especially when you just all of a sudden switch your coordinators and switch your system a little bit. But I honestly think that with his arm, vertical just might be his game. I just think you need to find ways to get guys more open downfield. So I think and it's interesting what you said about Jalen Hurts, because I have him comped where he would fit best would probably be New Orleans under Kellen Moore, because I think he would do similar things that Jalen Hurts was asked to do in Philadelphia. But just the turnovers, dude. Like, Jalen Hurts does not turn the ball over that much.
No.
He threw 3 interceptions against Michigan, which is a big one. And Michigan lacking Harbaugh now, and you still turn the ball over 3 times. And of course, Michigan's still obviously a great school. I guess, yeah, my comp should have been like a poor man's or wish version of Jalen Hurts. But if you're expecting to get a Jalen Hurts type production out of him, you're not going to get it.
Right. And we'll go with the past comp with Joe Milton. When I watch Joe Milton, he plays in that weird veer and shoot scheme at Tennessee where you're really mostly just pushing the ball down the field on option routes with those really wide splits, not applicable to the NFL game. Then at the Senior Bowl, people were really impressed by his arm, but if you watch the game, you go, oh man, this looks ugly, which is fair because the Senior Bowl. Then he gets to New England and very strong preseason, And he had a lot of accuracy issues like Milrow, right?
Yeah.
In the preseason, those kind of go away for the most part. And then when he had to fill in for Drake May in the last game of the year, he looked great. Really accurate down the field. Seems like, again, it's a small sample size. It's not quite the same, obviously, so we can't really tell the full story here, but those things seem to dissipate a bit. Do you think that could that happen for Milrow too? Do you think he has the tools to do that?
Yeah, I think it could. And you're right. It is small sample size. I mean, he played against backups and third stringers at best in the preseason. And Buffalo was sitting a lot of their guys too in the last preseason or in the last regular season game. They had the playoffs all locked up. It was a mean nothing game for them, really, and cost the Patriots a decent draft pick and maybe costing them Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. It definitely can get better, but you need good coaching. And Alex Van Pelt, as an offensive coordinator, I am the biggest critic of him as an offensive coordinator. I don't like that kind of old school West Coast offense, but he's been credited a lot for developing Drake May and kind of hiding his flaws and developing his accuracy mechanics, et cetera, et cetera. So you would think that he did the same thing with Joe Milton, right? So I think you get him with a good QB coach and that stuff can go away, but we'll see if Joe Milton does get traded, starts for a team, and has to play against ones, if that still holds up. Time will tell, but I think it can be fixed. Like, these guys aren't finished. They're still coming out of college.
Yeah.
But we'll see if he can take to some good coaching.
Yeah, that's fair. And Milrow will be turning 23. So
yeah, so still mid-age,
yeah.
Kind of.
Not a senior citizen quarterback like Brandon Whedon back in the day. Not exactly young either. Yeah, like I think I kind of see the Milton thing with Milrow a little bit. I could see him being successful in the right situation, but like there's a lot of work to be done. So we'll see. We'll see. Dave, number 4.
Number 4, we got Riley Leonard out of Notre Dame.
Okay.
So I just like him as a person, because, 3-star recruit, like, fine, middling in the pack, but goes to Notre Dame, which obviously has a high standard for its athletes, right? And is able to become the starter in a sophomore season for Duke. Like, he commits to Duke, becomes the starter in sophomore season, leads them to a Military Bowl victory and against UCF, which, again, you can say, whatever, it's UCF, who really cares? But Duke isn't exactly a high-standing school, right? So we're seeing this trend of he's elevating a lower school to probably one of their better seasons that they've ever had, and then goes to Notre Dame, obviously, losing the national championship game. But even to get there, you got to go through an increasingly long college playoff. So he's doing it at high competition as well. And he was the only QB in the Senior Bowl, and I know we've kind of nitpicked the Senior Bowl and Combine and stuff and said that we don't really care. But if you can at least show up there and show up at all, it deserves some sort of recognition. He's kind of the same as the QBs just below with McCord and Rourke. He doesn't really make plays out of structure. You put him on a bootleg and his accuracy really drops. His mechanics are a little rough as well, which they kind of go hand in hand, right? He also has kind of that gunslinger mentality. If he just likes to throw the ball into tight windows. And at Notre Dame and with Duke and their competition, you can probably get away with. I don't think you're going to be able to get away with that kind of stuff in the NFL with closing speed and how the league is trending towards athletic linebackers over the middle. But they're basically just a lot of safeties playing middle linebacker at this point, right? I kind of have him as a Ryan Tannehill type guy, and that was my player comp from. He's a jack of all trades, master of none. He doesn't really shine. You just want him to give Booby the ball. Just get out of the way, give the ball to your playmakers, and then they will elevate you for you.
Yeah, that's fair. I think with him, he actually reminds me a little bit of like Tim Tebow in the sense of that this guy's an ultimate competitor. He just does whatever he can to win. But there's so many glaring accuracy issues for him. I don't know if you noticed, but when I was looking over the film with him, there's like easy throws that he is missing egregiously. Little 5 to 10 yard throws, hitches, speed out, stuff like that, that he's just flat out missing. I go, wow, like that's a throw that if a high school quarterback misses, you go, whoa, that's not good enough right now. So that's an issue for me. I think a lot of his production from what I saw was at him as a runner making really easy throws when teams started to stack the box and he could take his one-on-one shots. I don't know how applicable his skill set is going to be at the next level. I would take a guy like Milroe over him personally because I think there's more there. I don't know how much better Leonard is going to get.
No, and those are all very valid worries, and I think the comp to Tim Tebow isn't inaccurate either. Yeah, I think, but playing devil's advocate, you get him can he get coached up like a Joe Milton or what we hope Jalen Milroe can get, and maybe that can get fixed up, because that was the biggest thing with Tebow, right, is that he never fixed those accuracy issues. And yeah, Leonard as well is a deceptively fast dual threat QB. Like you don't see that usually with a 6'4", 215-pound QB, but he can move. I think Tim Tebow, the floor might be Tim Tebow, where you're really hoping that he can develop on those kind of skills. But then the ceiling, I mean, we'll see. I mean, the ceiling, is probably Ryan Tannehill, where he comes in and just kind of gets the ball to your playmakers and gets the hell out of the way.
That's fair. And, as time went on, Tannehill really became a true pocket passer, really excelling in the play action run game there with Derrick Henry in Tennessee. So that's your number 4.
My number 3 is Jackson Dart. And no, I don't think he's a first-round QB. I don't think he's going to the Raiders at 6. I would love to hear.
Well, especially with Gino now. There's no way, right?
Yeah, right.
Unless we want a repeat of Atlanta last year, which was heavily scrutinized, to say the least.
Heavily scrutinized until all of a sudden he was starting over Kirk Cousins.
Well, I think it was more the process, right? Like, you're going to sign this quarterback to this massive deal coming off an Achilles injury. That's bad enough. Yeah. Now, you should be trying to win with this guy despite it being a bad move, and you pick a quarterback at that spot. Now, again, I love Michael Penix, and I think that's going to really work out for them long term. It was just how they did things. It didn't make any sense. Terrible process. 0 out of 10. Yeah. Right? Penix as a player, 10 out of 10. I like him, and you know what? He looked really good. Really good at the games that he had to play. Better than Cousins. So,
I mean, pretty low bar to step over. Cousins did not look great. But yeah, moving on to Jackson Dart. I think his probably high second round for one of the teams that will forego the top 2 QBs and try and take a flyer. But you still got to pick him relatively high before somebody else takes him, because I think after the first 2, there's already a big drop off. And then after Jackson Dart, there's another big drop off. So I think that'll end up pushing him up the board a little bit into a early day 2 pick. I don't mind Jackson Dart. I mean, A, because I just love his name, and B, he shows enough that you're like, wow, there's something there. And the way he throws the ball is very interesting. Like, I think he'd be a great 7-on-7 QB where you just have to watch him throw the ball with like very limited pressure. But again, he's also not super accurate. His footwork and mechanics are kind of, his below the shoulders mechanics really need a lot of work. He was very rarely asked in Ole Miss's system to be a drop back passer.
Yeah.
Because it was a very QB friendly system, right? You just basically have to throw RPOs to your big guys on the outside, and they'll come down with the slants or the intermediate digs. And my comp for him was Gardner Minshew, and I think that's a pretty accurate comp. Of course I do. I'm the one who made the comp. But he's just very interesting to watch. He has very interesting tools, and he'll make all these splash plays that I think are the reason why he's getting pushed up the board, right? Like, wow, look, there's something there. He does enough that will keep people wanting and guessing and intrigued. He's the hot dude that you think you can change him, but he'll never change.
Hey, there's the player comp right there. That's unreal. Way to correlate it back to real life, Dave.
What I did.
Like it. When I watch them at Ole Miss, it's a lot of RPOs, right? And again, like NFL teams are running them, but they're not quite as effective in the NFL game, right? Because you don't have the wide hashes. Everything's played mostly in the middle of the field in the NFL, and you need to be able to drop back. So what do you think of his arm, though? You have the Gardner Minshew comp, who has a little bit of a noodle, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
He has more of a plus arm than Minshew, no?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. He, like I said, if he was a 7-on-7 QB, he'd be top in the league. I think he has a very good arm and he can torque it deep from different arm slots. And yes, he thrives in the RPO system. But the times he was asked, you did see plays where he would maneuver around the pocket and was able to still keep it live, keep it downfield, which is different from Gardner Minshew, obviously, with his noodle arm. But I just say Gardner Minshew because of the interesting tools and the wow factor that you see.
Okay. All
You're
right.
really throwing a dart with Jackson Dart, hoping that you hit a bullseye with them.
So tools there, but again, very much a project. Not ultimately, you don't want to take this guy in the first round. So that Dave's number 3 is Jackson Dart. Number 2, Dave.
Number 2 and 2 and 1 are pretty much chalk. Number 2 is Shedeur Sanders. Even though I think you agree with this as well. I'm not a big fan of Shedeur Sanders. I think he's definitely his father's child with his confidence. But unlike his father, he does not have the talent to back it up. He's got a high football IQ, I guess you could say. Like having a Hall of Fame father will do that for you, right? He's got a great good touchdown to interception ratio, and that's where his kind of intelligence shows. I mean, you throw 54 touchdowns to 27 interceptions. That's the ratio you want with the top prospect coming out of college, right? He doesn't really break down under stress either. Like, he knows how to handle it. And in Colorado, he had a terrible offensive line, but was still able to make Colorado at least quasi-relevant. But you can make 1,000 arguments as to why that really is. But a lot of his shortcomings come with this kind of unfounded confidence or cockiness, right? Like, he thinks his improv skills are better than they are, and they end up leading to negative plays, which he won't take the check down. He'll try to keep the play alive, look for that splashy play. And he's just got average arm talent. There's just nothing too sexy about what he actually can do. When your skill set is kind of a short intermediate passer, but your mindset is to be a Patrick Mahomes type player, those two don't add up. Like, they don't go together. And I think that's where you're going to see him kind of fall. And I also don't like that he's only ever been coached by his dad.
Yeah, that's pretty wild, hey? Like, just everywhere he's gone. You know what's one thing that's really interesting with him? Deion Sanders is your dad. I believe their mother was like a track star or something like that. Like, she was an athlete in her own right, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere.
I believe
he's not a plus athlete at all at the quarterback position. Your dad is like the greatest DB of all time and probably a top 5 athlete ever in the NFL. And he's not a plus athlete, which is so weird to me. Like, so strange to me. I don't get it. But yeah, I'm not that high on him either. I think if you take all of the alleged character concerns and stuff like that. And again, you just hear things. You're not actually in the room. So I could see that being an issue, only being coached by his dad and having a little bit of a cocky attitude. Let's take that away. When I just watch his film and watch him as a football player, take all that aside. Yeah, I'm not wowed. I go, this guy is smart. He can play the position at a good level, doesn't have a plus arm. His accuracy is really good, and he's not playing against great competition. So this is a guy, I think he is a first round talent, but I think ideally in every other quarterback class, he's like a late first round pick, early second round pick. Now, someone's going to take him early, obviously. I think
just out of necessity.
For instance,
desperation.
The Giants don't have a quarterback right now. They just flat out don't have one. So, because I think, or maybe they have DeVito.
They only have DeVito on their roster right now.
So, Giants might take him if they don't get Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson.
Fingers crossed.
Not exactly what you want. I don't really see it with him. I don't. What do you think his ceiling is? I think it's like average starter. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I have too. I have his comp as Geno Smith, and I think that's generous. Unfortunately,
Geno has a big arm.
Yeah, but just with the career trajectory, I could see them going. I think If I could predict and look into my magic ball and see where his career could go, I think I could see him being drafted high, probably burning out there very quickly, having to move on. And then by year like 9, like similar to Geno Smith, he humbles up a little bit, learns that this league is not to be taken for granted that you're in this spot, and then just ends up putting it all together. And that's kind of where my Geno Smith comes from. And maybe as he gets older, sees more systems, kind of gets used to the game, he comes in for like a injured Russell Wilson and does just fine. That's kind of where that comp came from. But you're like right in that any other draft, he would not be a top 5 pick. You'd be picking him in the back of the first round. Maybe a team like Pittsburgh, who just has everything except for a QB on their roster, might pick him, or a team with an aging QB that they're just looking for a guy to develop and will eventually be the starter. And that's where I could see that his career kind of going.
You know what? I like that. I actually like that Geno comp, as you talk through it. So Shedeur Sanders is Dave's number 2, which leaves the obvious number 1, Dave.
The obvious number 1 being Cam Ward. Not high on Cam Ward either. But really? He's much more... No, but if someone has to go 1 overall or in the top 5, Cam Ward's the most deserving. Again, I have a comp for him for Russell Wilson. I think it's a pretty apt comp in that he is an explosive athlete, has great mental toughness, competes, wins wherever he goes, can hang in the shootouts when stuff breaks down. And I know you love Cam Ward, and you were talking about him like week 2 of the college season, and I was like, yeah, okay, we'll see. But you were right on this, that he's being considered the top. He won every QB award, basically, that isn't the Heisman. He's a good QB to go to like one of these top 5 teams that just have not much around them. I think he'd actually be really great at with the Jets. Or not the Jets, excuse me, the Giants. Just having those great receivers around him, Darius Slayton, Malik Neighbors, even Wan'Dale Robinson has been fine.
Yeah, he's
like
good. Yeah.
Guys like that who can elevate you, and when you're doing your strength of like running around, improvising, they're the kind of guys who can make plays down the field for you as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. As you said, I love Cam Ward. I see a superstar here.
Oh, he's right up your alley.
He is, but I do like the Russell Wilson comp because he isn't a scrambler to run, right? He's a guy that gets out of the pocket when he needs to, and he keeps his eyes downfield. It's about finding his playmakers and extending the play the right way, in my opinion. And you know what? Like, there are times where maybe he's a little bit too calm and you see some weird fundamental things where like his feet aren't moving at all and he's really narrow and it just looks odd. But this is a guy that has constantly got better. Being an Oregon fan, I saw him play at Washington State a couple times, and I remember there wasn't really a lot of buzz on him, and I watched Washington State play Oregon really tight, I believe 2 years ago, and I went, wow, this guy's really good. Like, he doesn't make bad decisions. They're playing in this air raid system, and they're outclassed talent-wise, and he is moving the ball up and down the field like nothing. So this has been a guy I've been high on for a while. I think he has all the tools in the world, and you want to talk about the poise and maybe a little bit too much sometimes. I think you would agree on that. He's unfazed, though, and that's such a rare commodity. Like, just the kind of nonchalant cockiness when he has the ball in his hands is something I haven't seen before, and I love it. It's pretty... I don't think I've ever seen anything like it, to be honest with you. I don't think this isn't like an Andrew Luck coming out or something like that, or even like, say, a Cam Newton coming out where there's this ridiculous athlete, because I think he's a good athlete, not insane by any means, but this guy can play the quarterback position at a high level, and I think he's going to be a top 5 to 10 guy once he finds his game completely for like 10 years. I think this guy is a can't miss. That's my opinion.
Yeah. What did you say? Nonchalant cockiness. That's a good soundbite that we can use. Nonchalant cockiness. I mean, you're right. And there's a lot of things that, even breaking away from the improvisational ability, which is already worthy of being drafted, he's smart, and he runs the system. He calls the protections at the line of scrimmage. He's smart. He has great mental toughness. He's led multiple fourth quarter comebacks. The guy just, like you say, he's a gamer. The guy plays ball. He's a football player. He throws the ball in structure very well. He obviously has the improvisational ability, which is what the NFL is trending towards, right? You need to be able to do both. And he's the only QB in this class who can competently do both consistently. There is still some red flags with it. I mean, he has ball security issues. Like he fumbled the ball 8 times last year, which is a huge red flag for me. You don't want your QB turning the ball over, especially not like that. And I find that he has a little bit of Zach Wilson in him. He can play hero ball, getting himself into trouble. But if he can kind of develop his traits and put it all together, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe he could be a top 10 QB.
Well, only time will tell. Dave, thanks for joining us here. Tell us, guys, what you think about Dave's top 10 list. Who's your number one? Who's in your top 5? We're going to be back tomorrow with a receivers list, Dave's top 10 receivers. We're going to do a mock draft on Friday, and we have so much more to come. Thanks for joining us here on the Film Grinders podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Film Grinders podcast. Make sure to follow us on all your favorite podcast platforms. From me and the guys, thank you. We'll see you next time.